All right, and from the quote of the day, we now come straight to the dailies. We have the Standard newspaper, we have the Daily Nation, certainly with the Star, and the Business Daily, that is locally, and also we'll be going to the East African side of this world. And of course, we also tell you what is happening na uko kwa majirani. Lakini for now, let's first of all begin with the Daily Nation. What is on the Daily Nation, the front page? We are talking politics, but also the high cases of abductions that have been witnessed. Perhaps the Daily Nation saying it's more or less of a return from the time that we got to see people who are hitting the streets or headed to the streets, as well also getting to be abducted. So, I mean, after all that that we got to see sometime last week as we were commemorating the Gen Z protest of 2024. Suddenly the abductions are back, and this is captured on the front page of the Daily Nation. The front page of the Daily Nation expounded on page 4, where they say return of abductions and enforced disappearances. Families of four men who went missing after being seized by the people believed to be state agents in the days leading up to Thursday's demonstrations marking the second anniversary of the bloody 2024 anti-tax protest that have demanded that the government reveal their whereabouts. This is a story that is captured on page 4 extensively, and they speak of this gentleman, Davis Lichuma, Macmillan Kiari, as well as Abdulaziz Duba and Michael Olo. I mean, some of them also had been abducted, but of course we saw them coming back to their families safe and sound, of course, with a bit of complaints as to the difficulties that they encountered on those nights, or the night, of course, after being abducted, and, of course, the radical experiences that they had, just giving out their stories. But these four have not yet been found. So where could they be? These are the big questions. The 6 activists detained following last week's protest, tortured in captivity and abandoned in Nairobi as well. On the front page and the top strip, that is, we are talking about fence-sitters' pressure on these leaders to pick sides. That is politically in the country. And you see more of these are faces of the ODM, apart from Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, who, yes, declared over the weekend clearly that he is no longer part of President William Ruto's UDA. But the question would be then, where are you sitting? And of course, he said that he should be given some time so that he can come out and declare his political position. But the likes of Nyong'o, the likes of Millie, the likes of Winnie, as well as Otiende Amolo, and the auntie to Winnie, sister to Raila Odinga as well, Ruth, being called upon to declare their position, whether they are with the broad-based government or Linda Mwananchi, or where exactly do they stand politically. A story that has been captured on the front page, expanded on page 7. But on this other side, outage after army chief shuts down NMG outlets in Uganda. And increasingly, we're getting to see these cases where the media entities feel like they're being targeted by, of course, the leaders of the land, and that NTV Uganda and Spark TV were forced off air, and soldiers deployed outside the Daily Monitor's offices during a security crackdown that is on Nation Media Group yesterday, ordered by Uganda's Chief of Defense, none other than General Muhoozi. And of course, this is a story that is expounded on page 2 that has brought a lot of outage across East Africa, with Memni looking at what played out also last week between President William Ruto and the Standard Group Limited right here in Nairobi, or perhaps in the country. Many saying that it is coming to a time when, again, we'll get to see our leaders trying to gag the freedom of the media, which automatically then would mean is gagging the freedom of the people. So, yeah. That has been captured on the front page. Another one on the question of education, still on the front page. Teachers to renew TSC license every 5 years, and new regulations. And these are some of the things that we'll be talking about this morning. Just getting to understand what is this that government then is coming up with ways of perhaps just getting to say that there needs to be new regulations of renewals. This also coming at a time when NTSA had also declared adjustments as to how they're going to be running affairs of the vehicles in the country. Something that has brought a lot of, outage as well across the country. And we just get to understand, what does the government seek to achieve with that and just how successful they're going to be. And then we pick the Standard newspaper, the front page. Spending spree, a new report from the Controller of Budget shows that county governments are wasting huge amounts of money on unnecessary allowances and cost of local travel, conferences, as well as international meetings. And of course, it captures the pictures of some of the key governors in the country, starting from the Nairobi governor, that is Johnson Sakaja, and highlighting what it is that has been spent, saying that 1.18 billion amount that Nairobi County spent on domestic travel alone, and 373.61 million amount that was spent on foreign trips. In Machakos County, they say that they spent 249.15 million. That is in Machakos County for this is just domestic travels, and 64.89 million amount that was spent on foreign travel. And of course, Homa Bay, you cannot forget that also has been captured on this other side, 219.82 million. That was spent by Homa Bay County on domestic travel with no allocation for foreign travels. And of course, this coming at a time when we also have seen just how much these leaders are committed into pushing the question of politics in the country. We have seen the likes of Gladys Wanga across the different parts of the city as well, or perhaps the country, addressing and also advancing the agenda of the broad-based government. Perhaps some of these travels are going into their political missions, and that is what the Controller of Budget is questioning. On page 2 and 3, also talking about the case in Uganda, where the Uganda's military silence nation media outlets in press crackdown. That also has been captured on the Standard newspaper, and a couple of many other stories that have been captured. Of course, we'll be going into the details of it also when we look at what is on the other side in terms of sports and all that. On the front page of the Star newspaper, water cartels thrive in cities as households drown in costs. That is one of the stories that is captured on the front page, perhaps the biggest, and expounded on page 4 and 5. And the question is, what is this that brings on board public anger that has grown as residents feel shortage is artificial? That most of the households that you go to today, most of the flats, most of the estates, you find that the citizens there are actually decrying of the fact that there is not water, or there is no water. But then again, of course, this on the side, there is a lot of cartels that are going out there with boozers selling water. What could have informed this? Is it by design so that then they can make a kill out of it? You could get details of it on page 4 and 7 as said. Ruto, my rivals are below par and I'll crush them when it comes to 2027. President William Ruto speaking about this for the better part of the weekend in Meru and highlighting the many things that he says the government has done in terms of development and intends to do. We definitely are going to talk about the Tharaka-Nithi Bridge this morning, or the Nithi Bridge, if you'd want to call it. And of course, we get to understand what really this means, as the president says that he has set aside 7 billion, and we have also contractors already on ground to focus on that, the promises that he's made for the longest of time. And the question is, what is this that has told or perhaps has stopped this bridge from actually being fixed, as the president has continuously said, and what are the possibilities that then the people of this side can trust him to that? And yes, that is expounded on page 9. On page 9, yes, of the Star newspaper. And I think those are the key stories. Cooking fat, silent killer, lacking in Kenyan foods. That is also a very important story that you might need to check, especially if you're keen about your health, where they say Kenya has been urged to urgently introduce stricter limits on harmful industrial trans fats in foods. And of course, a move that could prevent tens of thousands of deaths. A new policy brief suggests. A story captured on page 9, as I have said. And on this other side, opposition says state machinery machinery deployed ahead of Ol Kalou poll. We have seen a bit of issues, political issues, intolerance as captured, and to the question of Ol Kalou. I mean, I think the aspirant of UDA was decrying of the fact that his posters as well as his banners have been tampered with by his political, rivals, and therefore saying that this is a recipe for disaster if it's not going to be quelled in good time. What do we have on the Business Daily? 188 billion flood losses trigger state disaster funding overhaul. That is on the front page, the big story as captured right there. They say new plan 6 shift from emergency relief as well as climate risks linked to slow recovery, and that Kenya lost an estimated about 187.8 billion due to floods in just 6 months. That is in 2023 and 2024, exposing the mounting financial burden of climate disasters that has prompted the government to overhaul financing of its emergency operations. Just how successful are they going to be? And of course, the biggest questions would always be, why is it that some of these remedies have not been put on board in good time to avoid such cases? Because, well, unfortunately, when you see these climatic disasters, they always go to the extreme drought and extreme floods in the nation. And you ask yourself, what will it take for us to get it right in terms of taming the same? Absa Bank CEO Abdi Mohamed exits linked to Jobat, a local lender, and that Abdi Mohamed has resigned as Absa Bank Kenya Chief Executive Officer. That is 3 years after he took the job, and of course extensively expounded on page 6. The biggest question is, what does this mean for this critical entity and its customers, and why it is that it has gotten to this level? As I have said, this is extensively captured on page 6 of the Business Daily. And I think those are the key stories. Blow to Kenyan oil marketers as Rwanda moves to G2G fuel deal. Now, one of the deals that we have really questioned in the country, just how successful is Rwanda going to be when handling this? And have we gotten it right according to what the Kenya Kwanza government says, or perhaps the president says? Well, is something that we also get to see. But then Rwanda will shift to a government-to-government deal, fuel importation deal, that is from August this year, signaling reduced business for the Kenyan oil marketers who are still smarting from the loss of the Ugandan market. These are the local dailies that we have this morning. But also, yes, we have Taifa Leo. There you go. Wanasiasa vuguvugu taabani. Nafikiri itakuwa ni sawa na ile ambayo tumeisoma katika Daily Nation, ya kwamba wanaambiwa ni wakati nyinyi mnatakikana muweze kutangaza msimamo, kwamba mmesimama upande gani, haswa wakati ambapo nchi yetu inaelekea katika masuala ya siasa zaidi au kuzidi kuhusu mwaka wa 2027. Kwa hiyo wanakabiliwa na shinikizo watangaze msimamo wao. Nafikiri tuliwataja hapo awali, kama unawaona sura zao zimewekwa pale: Nyong'o, Winnie Odinga, kutakuwa na Millie Odhiambo, kutakuwa na Ruth Odinga pia, Otiende Amolo, na kuna mwingine bali anaitwa nani huyu, Kiharu Member of Parliament, Ndindi Nyoro. Kama nilivyosema hapo awali, wengi ni wa ODM. Ndindi Nyoro atakuwa tu ni ndiye ambaye ni tofauti. Katika weekendi alizungumza akasema kwamba amejitenga na UDA. Kwa hiyo tunasubiri kuona atakuwa amesimama upande gani. Alafu hapo chini naona kwamba kuna Murkomen. Murkomen anazungumzia Gachagua aliyekuwa naibu rais, akisema kwamba anajua kwamba yeye na wengineo wengi ambao ndio labda wanasiasa ni wale ambao wamekuwa wakilipia au kushinikiza kwamba Wakenya wanakwenda katika masuala ya vuguvugu. Kwa hiyo anasema kwamba viongozi hao watupiana maneno makali, huku Murkomen akitishia kwamba atamchukulia hatua Rigathi. Imewekwa katika ukurasa wa 4 wa Taifa Leo. Alafu hapa kuna nyingine, nafikiri ni mambo ya mpira. Afrika yafanya mambo fainali za kombe la dunia. Kwa hiyo kati ya timu 10 za bara hili zilizofuzu 9 zaingia katika hatua ya timu 32 bora, ukurasa wa 20. Nafikiri watu wamekuwa wakifuatilia sana, lakini nafikiri kwa wale ambao wamekuwa wakifuatilia wanasema ni huzuni sana kwa South Africa, Afrika Kusini, kwa sababu kwa bahati mbaya au sijui ni nzuri, walitimuliwa jana, na uliona kwamba watu wengine walikuwa wamefurahia sana, wakisema kwamba labda ni bora kwamba South Africa watoke. Sijui ni kwa nini. Nafikiri kumekuwa na siasa nyingi hapa na pale ambazo Waafrika wengi wamekuwa wakifuatilia kwa bahati mbaya. Kwa hiyo wao walitimuliwa, hawa wengine ambao wamebaki nafikiri watakuwa ni 9. Basi tutaona basi Afrika itafanya vipi. People Daily, how opposition retreat gave Ruto political breathing room. The story captured on page 4. And of course, we also perhaps are talking about what played out during the commemoration of the Gen Z protest, that is for 2024. And this is the second commemoration or anniversary. Most of the leaders calling on Kenyans to take it slow. If you have got to go and hit the streets, let it be peaceful demonstrations, which was largely peaceful across the different parts of the country, apart from pockets where we got to witness a bit of intolerance. But they say, and the likes of Gachagua hit their chest to say that he appreciates the supporters that listened to him, to go ahead and say that, you know what, we're not going to hit the streets, but all the same, we do not fail to commemorate these days. And on the front page still, and expounded on page 8, Morara Kebasu's entry sets the stage for a new political context in Burabu. But we also got to witness a bit of intolerance there from him and also his opponents, while he was declaring his position and also highlighting what he intends to do for the people of Burabu. And of course, his opponents also not feeling so good. The bodyguards of course, engaged in a bit of tussle here and there, but that is what you definitely expect with the politics of this nation, something that we hope we then outgrow. Wetangula gamble, Nahumicha's endorsement sets Ford Kenya on a collision course in a Trans Nzoia, story captured on page 9. It's been quite interesting to watch just what is likely to play out in Trans Nzoia. Natembeya, of course, holding his grip, but on this other side, more contenders coming on board and seeking the gubernatorial position. But critically is, of course, the bigger parties and Ford Kenya being mentioned here. What does it mean for Wetangula as he gambles to ensure that he continues to enjoy the kind of support that he has in this turf that is more of a cosmopolitan, but also, yes, with lots and lots of supporters. That is from or perhaps that is for the Ford Kenya party. And this at a time when also this leader, who's the Speaker of the National Assembly, is struggling to ensure that he is able to still maintain the numbers for President William Ruto. That is calm. 2027. Remember, he's declared out there to say that his mission this time around is not to go lower for a gubernatorial position or any other position or senatorial, but his main mission would be to ensure that UDA or perhaps the Kenya Kwanza government gets a second term, and then thereafter he is going to chart his political interest targeting the presidency. Whether he is going to manage to bring the numbers, of course, as we witnessed sometime in 2022, is also a question of wait and see. So we get the East African. All right, and then, so what is happening in East Africa? And we have the East African right here. U.S. sanctions Rwanda farms on Congo mines. Department of Treasury accuses 4 entities, that is including National Gold Refinery, of laundering mineral illegally extracted in DRC and backing M23 rebels. This is a story that is captured on page 10 of the East African. And we know that this is what has largely been playing out, and many have said that we get to see these rebel activities. They are largely about the minerals that this nation continues to enjoy, and also the uncertainty of the political uncertainty that stays there. Just what needs to be done, even as, of course, the nations, or perhaps the East African nations, also are coming on board to see to it that they can as well come in to quell the unrest. And at some point in time, you see the M23 rebels, seizing fire. Before you know it, they're back at it. But of course, behind it, a lot of illegal activities playing out in the DRC. So, of course, this has been there for some time, but we certainly hope that finally they could get a bit of rest. But yes, US continues to throw sanctions, and this time around to Rwanda farms that is on these Congo mines. What could be their interest? Well, question of wait and see. Kiri is pushing Dick polls, but well, peace mediators warn that Juba is not ready for elections amid political tension and cash crunch, a story that has been captured on page 8 of the East African. And we get to see that South Sudan is headed for the poll. But what does it mean at a time or for this world's youngest nation? And of course, that is something to watch out for. Uganda protests Kenya's 300-piece levy on sugar. And now we are talking about millers say the protectionist move will kill integration. That is a story that has been expounded on page 6 of the East African. And on this other side, yes, we are back in the country where we're talking about the protests that have been witnessed. And while we were remembering the Gen Z protest 2024, the question of abductions continue to linger with us. What will it take for us to have these activities done, peacefully in the country without getting us to levels where people are losing lives, or we are having even these cases of abductions, as you can see there. And I think that is a picture that largely speaks to it, but it's a story that is expounded. We have The Citizen. Tanzanian artists urged to safeguard voices as AI use in music industry grows. That is a story captured on page 8. And we have also seen just how much this is happening across the world. The AI use in music industry grows. Whether it's a positive or not, we begin seeing people saying that perhaps this is not the way to go, because then we lack the originality. Away from it, the big story, why domestic sugar is missing from shops. Less than a year after Tanzania celebrated a historic milestone by exporting sugar, that is for the first time, the consumers are now facing a puzzling reality that supermarket shelves and retail outlets across the country are increasingly stocked with imported sugar instead of locally produced brands. Typically what happens in most African countries, and you ask yourself just why. They're talking about 85,000 tons of sugar exported in October 2025. And this amounting to about $72 million, or $72 million amount and in revenue. What does this mean for the industry in Tanzania? Of course, a story captured on page 3. You can get the details of it, and we get to see the ramifications of the same. Of course, they are also following up on what is in the World Cup and how DR Congo striker Mayele scored a first for Tanzanian football. That is a story captured on page 20 of The Citizen. And the uphill journey of children with special needs in pursuit of education. Well, a special report on page 2. And they extensively look at this and what the nation is doing to ensure that they guarantee these, children an education, or a right to education like all the others. And page 4 of The Citizen, the state enterprises face new push for stronger financial performance. This is typically what you would expect, but just how successful do they get to be with that? All right, tuko na gazeti la Mwananchi Tanzania, agizo la Katambi la pasua vichwa. Ajabu ni kwamba hiki ni kitu ambacho tumekuwa tukifanya katika nchi yetu kwa muda mrefu. Basi kwa nini Watanzania wanaona kama kuna ugumu? Ni la kuwakata, wanasema wamiliki wa hoteli na nyumba zote za kulala wageni, wakisema kwamba kusajili wageni kwa kutumia kitambulisho cha taifa ni lazima, na wadau wanafunguka huku wakisema kwamba labda hawapendi iwe hivyo au iwe hivyo. Ni habari ambayo iko katika ukurasa wa 4 wa Mwananchi. Wanasema kwamba wamiliki wa hoteli zote kama Airbnb, guest house na lodge nchini waanze kusajili kila anayeingia ndani kwa kutumia vitambulisho vya NIDA. Wageni wote wanaoingia kwenye miji wajisajili. Kwa hiyo hili ni jambo ambalo labda wengi wamezungumzia na wakisema kwamba labda ni jambo ambalo wengi hawatapendelea. Sijui ni kwa nini hawapendelei, kwa sababu ya masuala ya security, kwa sababu you understand just how critical security would be, and therefore that need to make sure kwamba wanajisajili ni muhimu sana. Kuna hapa juu, tetemeko la angamiza laacha vilio Venezuela. Nafikiri hiyo ni katika Dunia, ukurasa wa 4. Unfortunately, we get to see this catastrophic activities, natural catastrophics happening across the different parts. Ukweli wa mchungu, magonjwa ya moyo yakiongezeka. Ndio ni kwamba kazi za kitafiti zimeonyesha kuwa magonjwa ya moyo yanaongezeka kwa kasi, huku idadi kubwa ya wananchi wakiishi na magonjwa hayo bila kuyafahamu. Ukurasa wa 2 umekupatia habari hiyo kwa kina. Kwa hiyo in Uganda we only have the Vision this morning. Unfortunately, yes, the Monitor we don't have, but anyway, this also paints the picture of what is happening on the other side. Over 350 schools ordered to close. But why? Education Ministry advises parents to withdraw their children. This is a story that has been captured on page 5 extensively. Also, as you know, political tensions continue to be rife on this side, but also aside from it, because of the cases of Ebola and so much more. So when you get to the page 5 of the New Vision, then you get an extensive report as to why this plays out that way. And of course, some 70 tips new officers on integrity. I think that also is a plus, as they get to celebrate on the goodness of the officers and what it is that they do to ensure that the nation stays afloat. And of course, UCC speaks out on NMG shutdown. That has been the biggest story on this side of East Africa, where they say that, well, why is it that we get to witness a lot of gagging, on the media? But as the commander would say, well, the media is not supposed to be allowed to function freely. There should be some level of, at least management from the leadership. That's interesting. And let's take a look at the caricatures or the cartoons